Envision a world where every success masks a shadow, and the man you trust most is scripting your downfall in secret. In the heart of Chicago's glittering skyline, 60 floors above the bustling streets, Elena Hargrove Kensington stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, her hand resting gently on the pronounced curve of her 7-month pregnancy. The city sprawled beneath her like a circuit board of ambition and light, each illuminated window a testament to dreams pursued and sometimes shattered. The nursery behind her was a masterpiece of modern design cream walls adorned with holographic projections of celestial bodies that slowly rotated above a crib that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Every detail had been meticulously planned, from the temperature-controlled flooring to the air purification system that promised to protect her unborn child from even the smallest environmental threat. Elena was living what appeared to be the perfect life. As the heiress to the Hargrove pharmaceutical dynasty, she had married Damien Kensington, the brilliant CEO of Kensington Labs, a cutting-edge biotech firm that was revolutionizing the industry with neural enhancement technology. Their union had been dubbed the merger of the century by Forbes' Old Money Pharmaceutical Legacy meeting New World Innovation. She felt a flutter of movement within her, tiny feet pressing against her ribs. "Easy there, little one," she whispered, stroking her belly through the silk of her designer maternity dress. "Your father will be home soon." As if summoned by her words, Damien's voice echoed from the living room, sharp and commanding even through the closed door of his home office. "No, that's absolutely unacceptable. The neural sync trials must proceed on schedule. We're talking about a breakthrough that will redefine human cognitive enhancement." Elena turned from the window, watching her husband pace behind the frosted glass partition. Even in silhouette, Damien cut an impressive figure, tall, broad-shouldered, his movements precise and controlled. At 35, he had achieved what most could only dream of, building a billion-dollar empire on the promise of unlocking the human brain's full potential. The office door opened and Damien emerged, his phone still pressed to his ear. His charcoal Armani suit fit him like a second skin, and his dark hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour. But there was something in his expression, a tightness around his green eyes that Elena had noticed more frequently in recent weeks. "Handle it," he said curtly into the phone before ending the call. His face immediately transformed, the hard edges softening into the warm smile that had first captured Elena's heart 3 years ago at a medical innovation conference. "There's my beautiful wife," he said, crossing the vast living room in long strides. He knelt before her, placing both hands on her belly with a tenderness that seemed at odds with the man who had just been barking orders. "And how's my little genius doing today?" "Active," Elena replied, covering his hands with hers. "I think we might have a future athlete on our hands, or maybe a scientist who kicks down laboratory doors." Damien's laugh was rich and genuine, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. As he leaned in to kiss her, Elena caught a scent that made her pause. It wasn't his usual cologne, the Tom Ford Oud Wood she had gifted him last Christmas. This was different, metallic, clinical, like the sterile smell of a laboratory mixed with something else she couldn't quite identify. "Long day at the lab?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "You could say that," Damien replied, standing up and loosening his tie. "Which brings me to something I need to discuss with you." Elena felt a familiar knot form in her stomach. She had heard that tone before, the carefully modulated voice he used when delivering news he knew she wouldn't like. "There's been a development with the San Diego summit," he continued, moving to pour himself a glass of whiskey from the crystal decanter on the bar. "The FDA committee members have called an emergency meeting. Something about new regulations for neural enhancement trials." "When?" Elena asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Tonight. I need to fly out in 3 hours." He took a sip of his drink, avoiding her gaze. "I know it's sudden, and I hate leaving you, especially with your appointment tomorrow." "The 3D ultrasound," Elena finished, unable to keep the disappointment from her voice. "We were going to see the baby's face for the first time." Damien set down his glass and returned to her side, taking her hands in his. "I know, my love, and I'm devastated to miss it. But this meeting, it could determine the future of everything we've been working toward." The neural implant technology we've developed could help millions of people with Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injuries, cognitive disorders. This is bigger than us. Elena wanted to protest, to remind him that their child was the future, too, but she bit back the words. This was the price of being married to a visionary, she told herself. The greater good always seemed to demand personal sacrifice. Of course, she said, forcing a smile. The company needs you. We'll reschedule the appointment. Relief washed over Damien's features. You're incredible, you know that? I promise I'll make this up to you. After the baby comes, we'll take that trip to Santorini you've been dreaming about. Just the three of us. As he headed to their bedroom to pack, Elena's gaze fell on his briefcase, left carelessly by the marble kitchen island. A corner of paper was visible, peeking out from the outer pocket. Normally, she would never invade his privacy. Trust was the foundation of their marriage. But that strange metallic scent lingered in her nostrils, and something about his hurried explanation felt incomplete. Her heart pounding with an inexplicable dread, Elena moved toward the briefcase. She carefully extracted the paper, her hands trembling slightly. It wasn't a restaurant receipt or a business expense report as she'd expected. It was an invoice from Neuralink Technologies, a competitor of Kensington Labs. The itemized list made her blood run cold. Prototype Neural Interface Model X, 7 Cognitive Enhancement Module, Experimental Sensory Dampening Protocol. Level 3. Total $847,000. But it was the delivery address that made her knees weak. Not Kensington Labs. Not their home. But the Whispering Pines Resort on the shores of Lake Michigan, a secluded, ultra-exclusive retreat known for its discretion and privacy. Elena quickly returned the invoice to its place, her mind racing. Why would Damien be purchasing experimental technology from a competitor, and why have it delivered to a resort? The rational part of her brain offered explanations, perhaps a secret meeting, a potential acquisition, industrial espionage even. But her intuition, sharpened by pregnancy hormones and 3 years of marriage, whispered something different. 20 minutes later, Damien emerged from their bedroom with his leather travel bag. He had changed into dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, his travel attire of choice. He looked younger, more relaxed, as if shedding his suit had also shed years of corporate responsibility. All set, he announced, setting down his bag to embrace her. The car's waiting downstairs. Elena held him tightly, memorizing the feel of his arms around her, the familiar scent of his skin beneath that alien metallic odor. Be safe, she whispered. Call me when you land. Always do, he replied, pulling back to look at her. For a moment she saw something flicker in his eyes, guilt, fear. But it was gone before she could be certain. I love you more than anything in this world, Elena. Never forget that. I love you too, she managed, the words feeling heavy on her tongue. She watched from the window as he got into the waiting black Tesla. The car's autopilot engaged, its route displayed on the heads-up screen she could see from her vantage point. But instead of heading west toward O'Hare Airport, the car turned north, toward Lake Shore Drive, toward Lake Michigan, toward the Whispering Pines Resort. Elena's hand instinctively moved to her belly as a cold realization washed over her. Her husband had just lied to her face. The San Diego summit was a fabrication. The emergency FDA meeting was fiction. And whatever was waiting for him at that resort, it wasn't a business meeting. She stood there in the gathering darkness of their luxury penthouse, surrounded by all the trappings of their perfect life, the imported Italian furniture, the priceless art, the photographs of their fairy tale wedding, and felt it all crumbling around her. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if sensing her distress. Elena took a deep breath, her Hargrove blood beginning to boil beneath her shock. She was not just a trophy wife. She was an heiress, a woman who had been groomed from birth to protect her family's legacy. And if Damien thought he could deceive her while she carried his child, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The question that burned in her mind as she reached for her phone to call her sister wasn't just about the affair she suspected. It was about the invoice, the experimental technology, and that strange metallic scent that still lingered in the air. What if this wasn't just infidelity? What if the betrayal ran deeper, darker, into realms she couldn't yet imagine? And more terrifying still, What if she and her unborn child were already part of whatever twisted experiment her husband was conducting? As Elena's fingers hovered over her sister's contact, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. She was going to find out the truth, no matter how strange or horrifying it might be. Because in a world of enhanced minds and augmented reality, the most dangerous deception might not be the one you could see, but the one already flowing through your veins. "You sound upset." Lydia Hargrove's voice crackled through Elena's phone, instantly alert despite the late hour. Where others might have offered platitudes or asked if she was okay, Lydia cut straight to the heart of the matter. It was what made her such a formidable corporate lawyer and an even better sister. "Damien just left for a business trip that doesn't exist," Elena said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "And I found something, Lai. Something that doesn't make sense." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Lydia said without hesitation. "Don't do anything until I arrive. And Elena? Trust your instincts. They've never been wrong before." While waiting for her sister, Elena found herself drawn back to Damien's home office. She had never violated the sanctity of his workspace before it had been an unspoken boundary in their marriage. But boundaries, she realized, only mattered when both parties respected them. The office was a shrine to Damien's ambition. Awards lined the walls, patents framed like diplomas, photographs with tech luminaries and government officials. But it was his desk that drew her attention. The computer was locked, naturally, but a legal pad beside it bore his distinctive handwriting. Most of it was technical jargon she couldn't decipher, but one phrase made her blood run cold. Phase 3 successful, cognitive markers within expected parameters, no observable rejection symptoms. Proceed to next dosage level. Elena Hargrove, her maiden name. Before she could process the implications, the penthouse door chimed. Lydia had made it in 15 minutes, a record even for her. She swept in like an avenging angel in her power suit despite the late hour. Where Elena had inherited their mother's delicate beauty, Lydia was all sharp angles and fierce determination, their father's daughter through and through. "Show me everything," Lydia commanded, and Elena did. The invoice, the legal pad, the route the car had taken. Lydia absorbed it all with the calculating mind that had made her the youngest partner in her firm's history. "Neuralink Technologies," Lydia muttered, pulling out her tablet. "I know that name. They were in a patent dispute with Kensington Labs last year. Damien crushed them in court." Her fingers flew across the screen. "But they're still operational, focusing on, oh, this is interesting, black market neural enhancements. The kind the FDA would never approve." "What does that mean?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew. "It means your husband is either buying illegal technology from a former enemy or—" Lydia paused, her expression darkening. "Or he's testing something on someone. Elena, have you felt different lately? Beyond the normal pregnancy symptoms?" Elena's hand went to her temple, where a dull ache had been building for weeks. "I've been having vivid dreams. Sometimes I see things flashes of color at the edge of my vision. The doctor said it was normal, hormonal changes." "What doctor?" Lydia's voice was sharp. "Not your usual OBGYN?" "No. Damien insisted I see a specialist. Dr. Petrova at the Kensington Labs Medical Center. She said they had better prenatal monitoring technology." Lydia's expression could have frozen hell. "You've been seeing a doctor at his company? Elena, think. When did these appointments start?" The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. 6 months ago, right after I got pregnant, he said it was for the baby's safety, that they could monitor neural development in ways regular hospitals couldn't. "Jesus Christ," Lydia breathed. "Elena, I need you to listen to me very carefully. That invoice sensory dampening protocol, that's designed to suppress memory formation. And these notes about Phase 3, that's clinical trial terminology." The room spun slightly, and Elena gripped the edge of the desk. "You're saying he's been experimenting on me?" "I'm saying we need more information before we jump to conclusions," Lydia said, though her expression suggested she'd already made the leap. "But first, we need to know what's at that resort. If he's meeting someone from Neuralink." "We have to go there," Elena said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "Tonight." "You're 7 months pregnant," Lydia protested. "And possibly the subject of an illegal medical experiment," Elena countered. If I'm right, if he's been drugging me, then sitting here is the worst thing I can do. I need answers, Lai, for me and for my baby. Lydia studied her sister's face, seeing not the society wife but the Hargrove steel that ran through their bloodline. All right, but we do this smart, I'll drive. And we're stopping at my office first. I have some equipment that might be useful. An hour later, they were on Lakeshore Drive in Lydia's BMW, the city lights fading behind them. Elena had changed into comfortable clothes and packed an overnight bag, just in case. The equipment Lydia had retrieved included a high-end camera with a telephoto lens, a voice recorder, and most surprisingly, a small device that looked like a smartphone but wasn't. Signal detector, Lydia explained. Picks up electromagnetic frequencies. If he's really got neural tech with him, this will know. Since when do corporate lawyers carry spy equipment? Since I started representing whistleblowers from tech companies, Lydia replied grimly. You'd be amazed what passes for corporate espionage these days. As they drove, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Just boarded. Flight's delayed, but should still make the meeting. Love you. He's maintaining the lie, Elena said, showing Lydia the message. Good. Means he doesn't suspect anything. Elena, I need to ask, has he ever mentioned someone named Serena Voss? The name hit Elena like a physical blow. She's the head of research at Voss Biotech. They've been trying to poach Damien for years. Why? Because I had my assistant do some digging while we were at my office. Voss Biotech just registered a patent for neural interface technology nearly identical to what Kensington Labs has been developing. Either it's the world's biggest coincidence, or someone's been sharing secrets, Elena finished. Her mind raced back through the past month's late nights at the office, weekend conferences, hushed phone calls. Oh God, Lai. Last month there was a biotech summit in Boston. Damien came back energized, said he'd had a breakthrough, but he also came back with a new cologne. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Hotel receipts, Lydia muttered. Credit card statements. We'll need to check everything. But first, let's see what's waiting at Whispering Pines. The resort emerged from the darkness like something out of a fever dream. Ultra-modern architecture jutted from the landscape, all glass and steel against the primordial backdrop of the lake. Even at night, it hummed with subtle activity, soft lights, the occasional figure moving behind windows, the sense of secrets being kept. 40,000 a night for the premium villas, Lydia whistled. Whatever he's doing here, he's not being subtle about the expense. They parked in the visitors' lot, far enough from the main entrance to avoid immediate notice. Elena felt another wave of dizziness and gripped the dashboard. The dreams are getting stronger, she admitted. It's like someone's tuning a radio in my head, trying to find the right frequency. Lydia's expression was murderous. If he's done what I think he's done, Elena, neural enhancement drugs are incredibly dangerous, especially during pregnancy. We need to get you to a real doctor after this. After, Elena agreed. First, I need to see who he's meeting. They made their way carefully toward the resort, keeping to the shadows. The main building was a symphony of glass and light, but Lydia steered them toward the private villas scattered along the waterfront. Villa 7, according to the invoice delivery address. As they approached, the signal detector in Lydia's hand began to pulse. Jesus, she whispered. The EM readings are off the charts. There's definitely neural tech active in there. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see the warm glow of intimate lighting. Two figures moved inside, one recognizably Damien, the other smaller, feminine. They were standing close, too close, by a table laden with electronic equipment Elena couldn't identify. Is that? Elena began, but her question was answered as the woman turned profile, Serena Voss. Even from a distance, she was striking sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, the kind of ageless beauty that came from good genes and better surgeons. Recording, Lydia whispered, raising the camera. Through the telephoto lens, the scene became clearer. Damien was attaching something to his temple, a small, gleaming device that pulsed with soft blue light. Serena was doing the same, her movements practiced and efficient. Between them on the table was an array of monitors showing brain scans, wave patterns, streams of data Elena couldn't interpret. And then something extraordinary happened. The two figures suddenly stopped moving, their bodies going rigid. The lights on their temporal devices pulsed faster, sinking into a shared rhythm. On the monitors, the separate brain patterns began to merge, creating a unified wave that made Elena's vision blur just looking at it. Neural synchronization, Lydia breathed. They're literally sharing thoughts. Elena felt her knees weaken, but not from shock this time. The dizziness was stronger now, accompanied by a strange tingling at her temples. As she watched Damien and Serena in their technological embrace, she could almost feel something responding inside her own skull, a phantom frequency trying to match theirs. "We need to get closer," Elena said, though every instinct screamed danger. "I need to hear what they're—" She never finished the sentence. The world exploded into color and sound, her vision fracturing into 1,000 prismatic shards. For a moment, she could have sworn she heard voices, not just Damien and Serena's, but others, a chorus of whispers speaking in languages she didn't recognize but somehow understood. When her vision cleared, she was on her knees in the damp grass, Lydia's arms around her. Blood trickled from her nose, warm and metallic. "That's it," Lydia said, her voice broking no argument. "We're getting you to a hospital. Now." As Lydia helped her back to the car, Elena cast one last look at Villa 7. Through the window, she saw Damien remove the device from his temple, saw him turn to Serena with an expression of triumph she'd never seen before. But it was what happened next that chilled her to the bone. Serena's hand moved to her own abdomen in a gesture terrifyingly familiar, the same protective, unconscious movement Elena made a dozen times a day. "No," Elena whispered, the final piece clicking into place. "Lie, she's pregnant too." The drive back to the city was a blur of realizations, each more horrifying than the last. The experimental drugs, the neural synchronization, the timing of the affair. This wasn't just betrayal, it was something far more sinister. An experiment that involved not just Elena and her unborn child, but another woman, another pregnancy. "What kind of monster experiments on his own wife and child?" Lydia asked, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. But Elena already knew the answer. The kind who didn't see them as family at all, but as test subjects in a greater design. The question that haunted her as Chicago's skyline reappeared wasn't whether Damien had betrayed her, but how deep the betrayal went, and whether she and her baby were already too entangled in his web to escape. What if the child growing inside her wasn't just her baby, but part of something larger, stranger, more terrible than she could imagine? And what if Serena Voss's pregnancy was the key to understanding it all? The Northwestern Memorial Hospital emergency room at 2 a.m. was a symphony of controlled chaos, but Elena barely registered the noise. She sat on the examination bed, electrodes attached to her temples, while Dr. Sarah Chen studied the readouts with increasingly furrowed brows. "Mrs. Kensington, these neural patterns are unusual," Dr. Chen said carefully. "Have you been taking any medications we should know about? Participating in any clinical trials?" Lydia stepped forward before Elena could answer. "Doctor, we have reason to believe my sister may have been exposed to experimental neural enhancement drugs without her knowledge. We need a full toxicology panel and a comprehensive neurological workup." Dr. Chen's expression shifted from professional concern to alarm. "I'll order the tests immediately, and I'm calling in our head of neurology. If what you're suggesting is true—" She didn't finish, but Elena could complete the sentence. If it was true, she and her baby were in uncharted medical territory. 3 hours later, as dawn painted Lake Michigan in shades of rose and gold, the test results confirmed their worst fears. Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief of neurology, looked like he'd aged a decade in the time it took to review Elena's scans. "The compounds in your system are unlike anything in our database," he said, holding up a printout covered in chemical formulae. "But what concerns me most is this." He pointed to a brain scan showing unusual activity in Elena's hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. "These areas show signs of artificial stimulation. Someone has been systematically altering your neural pathways." "In layman's terms?" Elena asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Someone has been rewiring your brain, Mrs. Kensington. The good news is that the changes appear to be limited and reversible. The bad news is that we have no idea what the intended outcome was supposed to be." "What about the baby?" Elena's hand moved protectively to her belly. Dr. Webb's expression softened slightly. Fetal scans show normal development. Whatever was done to you seems to have been carefully calibrated to avoid direct harm to the child, which suggests medical knowledge, Lydia finished. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Elena closed her eyes, seeing Damien's face with new clarity. Not the loving husband she'd thought she'd married, but the brilliant scientist who saw everything, even his family, as potential data points in his grand experiment. I need to go home, Elena said suddenly. There's something I need to find. Absolutely not, Dr. Webb protested. You need observation, treatment. Doctor, Elena interrupted, steel in her voice. My husband has been experimenting on me for months. I need to know why before he realizes I'm onto him. Give me whatever medication will keep me stable for the next 24 hours. After that, I'll submit to whatever treatment you recommend. The doctor looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Elena's expression stopped him. Perhaps he recognized the look of a woman who would not be deterred, or perhaps he simply understood that sometimes the psychological need for answers outweighed immediate medical concerns. An hour later, armed with medications to suppress the worst of the neural symptoms and strict instructions to return immediately if anything worsened, Elena and Lydia returned to the penthouse. The space felt different now, not a home, but a carefully constructed laboratory where she'd been an unwitting test subject. He'll be at the resort until tomorrow at least, Elena said, moving systematically through the apartment. We need to find his real research notes, the ones he wouldn't keep at the office. They searched for 2 hours, finding nothing but the ordinary detritus of a life Elena now knew had been largely fictional. It was Lydia who made the breakthrough, her legal training serving her well. Elena, this painting. She was standing in front of an abstract piece Damien had bought at auction last year. It's hanging differently, lower than before. Together, they lifted the painting from the wall, revealing a small biometric safe. Elena stared at it, her mind racing. She'd never known it existed, but something deep in her altered neurons whispered the combination. Not numbers, but a pattern of touches on the scanner. Her hand moved almost of its own accord, tracing a complex design. The safe clicked open. Inside were 3 items that would change everything. A leather journal filled with Damien's handwriting, a hard drive labeled Project Gemini, and a photograph that made Elena's blood freeze. It showed 2 babies, identical in every way, lying side by side in a medical setting. On the back, in Damien's writing, embryos successful division and storage, phase 1 complete. Oh my God, Lydia breathed. Elena, are these? My embryos, Elena whispered. From our IVF treatments 2 years ago. We had trouble conceiving naturally, so we tried assisted reproduction. But we only implanted 1. Damien said the others weren't viable. She opened the journal with trembling hands, reading passages that transformed her husband from mere betrayer to monster. Day 127. Continues to show remarkable adaptability to the neural compounds. Memory suppression protocols working as intended, she has no recollection of the early procedures. The pregnancy provides perfect cover for continued experimentation. Day 203. Contact established with SV. Her ambition makes her the ideal secondary subject. Convinced her that stolen Kensington tech will give her company the edge. She has no idea she's receiving the same compounds as delivered through intimate contact. The synchronization potential is beyond my wildest calculations. Day 234. SV confirms pregnancy. Phase 2 initiated ahead of schedule. If my theories are correct, the children will be born with naturally enhanced neural pathways, capable of thought sharing from birth. The first true post-human generation. Elena dropped the journal, her hands shaking too violently to continue. He used my stolen embryo to impregnate his mistress. Our children, they're twins. Separated before birth. The sick bastard is trying to create telepathic babies, Lydia said, her voice dripping with disgust. Using you and this Serena woman as incubators. But Elena was already connecting more dots, her artificially enhanced neurons firing in patterns that felt alien yet undeniable. No, not just telepathic. Look at the neural synchronization equipment at the resort. He's creating children who can interface directly with technology, living computers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Damien. Darling, conference running long. Might need to stay an extra day. Hope the ultrasound went well. Love you. The casual cruelty of it, asking about an appointment he knew she'd miss, ignited something in Elena. Not just anger, but a cold, calculating fury that felt like her father's legacy awakening in her blood. "We're going back to the resort," she announced. "But not to spy this time. I'm done being the victim in his experiment. Elena, you need to be careful. If he realizes you know, he won't," Elena said with certainty. "Because I'm going to play the role he wrote for me, the devoted, trusting wife surprising her husband on his business trip. Except this time, I'll be the one running the experiment." She pulled out her phone and dialed the Whispering Pines resort. "Hello, this is Elena Kensington. My husband is staying in Villa 7 and I'd like to arrange a surprise. Yes, I'll need access to the villa. And please have your best champagne waiting, we're celebrating." As she spoke, her free hand moved unconsciously to her temple, where she could still feel the phantom tingling of neural connections trying to form. Somewhere out there, another woman carried her child, linked by technology and betrayal. But Elena was a Hargrove, and Hargroves didn't just survive, they conquered. "What's your plan?" Lydia asked as Elena ended the call. "Simple," Elena replied, her smile sharp as a surgical blade. "Damien thinks he's been experimenting on two unwitting subjects. He's about to learn what happens when one of them experiments back." She gathered what she needed: the journal, a selection of the medications Dr. Webb had prescribed, and most importantly, the neural device invoice with its detailed specifications. If Damien had been altering her brain chemistry, perhaps it was time to return the favor. The drive back to the resort was different this time. Where before there had been fear and uncertainty, now there was purpose. Elena felt the drugs in her system not as a violation but as a weapon she could learn to wield. Each flash of enhanced perception, each moment of crystalline clarity, was a tool in her arsenal. "You know," Lydia said as they neared the resort, "there's something almost poetic about this. He tried to play God with your mind, but he forgot the first rule of mythology." "What's that?" "The gods' greatest weakness is always their hubris. And Damien just gave you the keys to Olympus." The resort looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more clinical, perfect for what Elena had planned. She checked her appearance in the mirror: designer maternity dress, perfectly applied makeup, every inch the devoted wife. But behind her eyes burned something new, the fire of a woman who had been transformed against her will and chose to embrace the transformation. As they pulled into the valet circle, Elena felt another surge of the strange awareness that had been growing stronger. Somewhere in Villa 7, two people were sharing thoughts through artificial means, never suspecting that a third participant was about to join their exclusive neural network. "Ready?" Lydia asked. Elena's smile was answer enough. She was more than ready. She was evolved. And evolution, as Damien should have known, was never about the survival of the strongest, but the most adaptable. The hunt was about to begin, and this time the prey would learn what it meant to be stalked by a predator of their own creation. The concierge at Whispering Pines was a study in discretion, her smile never wavering as she handed Elena the keycard to Villa 7. "Your husband will be so surprised, Mrs. Kensington. The champagne you requested has already been delivered." "Perfect," Elena replied, matching the woman's professional smile. "Though I should mention my husband is in a critical meeting with a colleague. I'll wait inside until they're finished. I'd hate to interrupt important business." "Of course. The villa has excellent soundproofing, so you'll have complete privacy." The irony wasn't lost on Elena. Complete privacy, exactly what Damien had counted on for his clandestine experiments. She walked the now familiar path to Villa 7, Lydia hanging back in the main resort as planned. They'd agreed that Elena needed to do this alone, though Lydia had the local police on speed dial if things went wrong. But Elena didn't think they would. The enhancements Damien had forced upon her were singing in her blood now, showing her patterns and possibilities she'd never noticed before. The keycard admitted her silently into the villa's opulent interior. The space was even more impressive in daylight soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture, and that wall of windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The champagne waited in a silver bucket, 2 glasses beside it, as if mocking the twisted triangle Damien had created. But it was the equipment that drew her attention. The dining table had been transformed into a sophisticated laboratory. Neural interface headsets lay connected to a bank of monitors showing real-time brain scans. Chemical formulas scrolled across one screen, while another displayed what looked like ultrasound images, two sets, side by side. Elena approached slowly, her enhanced perception picking up details she might have missed before. The ultrasounds were labeled Subject A 28 weeks and Subject B 28 weeks. Both showed healthy fetuses, her children, growing in separate wombs, part of their father's demented experiment. Voices drifted from the bedroom, Damien's deep baritone and a woman's lighter tones. Not passionate, Elena noted with clinical detachment, but technical. They were discussing data. The synchronization rates exceeded projections by 30%, Serena was saying. If the prenatal conditioning holds, these children will revolutionize human cognition. They're not just children, Damien replied, and Elena heard the fervor of true belief in his voice. They're the bridge between human and artificial intelligence. Imagine it. Serena minds that can interface directly with quantum computers, process information at superhuman speeds, share thoughts across any distance. And their mothers? Serena's question held an edge Elena couldn't quite identify. What happens to the test subjects once the experiment concludes? There was a pause. When Damien spoke again, his voice was colder than Elena had ever heard it. The mothers were always temporary. Neural enhancement at this level isn't sustainable in adult subjects. The degradation will begin soon after delivery. 6 months, maybe a year if they're lucky. But by then, we'll have what we need. Elena's hand moved instinctively to her belly as the full horror washed over her. He hadn't just been experimenting on her. He'd been killing her slowly to create his post-human offspring. The dizziness, the nosebleeds, the strange visions, all symptoms of a brain burning itself out. She picked up one of the champagne flutes, her movements deliberate and calm. The enhanced neurons might be destroying her, but they were also showing her exactly what needed to be done. She reached into her purse and withdrew one of the pills Dr. Webb had given her, a neural inhibitor designed to counteract the experimental drugs. But Elena had no intention of taking it herself. The pill dissolved easily in the champagne, leaving no trace. She prepared both glasses, then settled onto the couch to wait. She didn't have to wait long. Damien emerged first, dressed casually in dark slacks and a button-down shirt, looking every inch the successful executive on a working vacation. The sight of Elena stopped him mid-stride, the color draining from his face as if he'd seen a ghost. "Catherine," he breathed, using the pet name that now sounded like mockery. "What are you doing here?" "Surprising my husband," Elena replied, her voice honey-sweet. "Though it seems I'm the one who's surprised. Hello, Dr. Voss." Serena had appeared behind Damien, and Elena took a moment to study her rival properly. She was beautiful in a sharp, predatory way, with the kind of bone structure that photographed well and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a sleek black dress that did little to hide her pregnancy, and her hand moved protectively to her belly in a gesture that mirrored Elena's own. "Mrs. Kensington," Serena said, recovering her composure with admirable speed. "This isn't what it looks like." Elena laughed, the sound bright and brittle. "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like. A clandestine meeting between my husband and a beautiful woman, complete with champagne and a bedroom. Though I must admit, the neural interface equipment is an unusual touch for an affair." She rose gracefully, picking up the champagne glasses. "But where are my manners? We should toast to, what would you call this? A successful collaboration?" Damien's eyes narrowed, and Elena saw him truly for the first time, not the charming husband, but the calculating scientist, assessing variables and probabilities. "You've been in my files." "Our files," Elena corrected. "Community property, remember? Though I doubt any divorce court is equipped to handle the division of stolen embryos and illegal human experimentation data." "You don't understand," Damien started, but Elena cut him off with a gesture. "I understand perfectly. You've been dosing me with experimental neural enhancers. You stole my embryos and used them to impregnate your mistress. You're trying to create genetically modified children with enhanced cognitive abilities. And according to your own notes, you expect me to die within a year of giving birth." She tilted her head, studying him. "Did I miss anything?" Serena had gone very still, her face pale. Die. Damien, you said the effects were temporary, reversible. He lied, Elena said conversationally. It's what he does. Tell me, Dr. Voss, when did the headaches start? The visual disturbances? The moments where you feel like someone else's thoughts are bleeding into yours? Serena's hand moved unconsciously to her temple, and Elena had her answer. He's been drugging you too, Elena continued. Every intimate moment, every shared touch, he was dosing you with the same compounds. We're both dying, Serena. Our children will be miracles of science and will be footnotes in his research paper. She's lying, Damien said, but his voice lacked conviction. The neural degradation is manageable. I've been working on a cure— No, Elena interrupted. You've been working on the next phase. I found those notes too. Once the children are born, you plan to raise them in a controlled environment, use them to perfect the technology. Their mothers are inconvenient variables to be eliminated. She held out the champagne glasses, one to each of them. So, let's drink to your success, to the future of human evolution. Damien took the glass automatically, his mind clearly racing. Serena hesitated, then followed suit. Elena raised her own glass filled with harmless sparkling water from the bathroom tap. To Project Gemini, she said, and to the mothers who made it possible. They drank. Damien immediately, Serena after a moment's pause. Elena watched them over the rim of her glass, counting the seconds. The neural inhibitor worked fast, she knew. Dr. Webb had warned her about its effects: disorientation, confusion, temporary shutdown of enhanced cognitive functions. Damien was the first to react, his hand going to his head. What? Something's wrong. Just your enhanced neurons shutting down, Elena explained calmly. Don't worry, it's temporary, unlike what you did to us. Serena dropped her glass, champagne splashing across the pristine floor. You drugged us? Poetic justice, Elena replied. Though mine won't kill you. Just level the playing field for a few hours. Damien tried to stand, but swayed dangerously. The brilliant scientist who'd played God with human consciousness was now struggling with basic motor functions. The children, he gasped. You don't know what you're doing. They need the neural conditioning to survive. Without the treatments. They'll be normal babies, Elena finished. Imagine that. A fate worse than death for a man who sees humanity as something to be transcended. She pulled out her phone, already connected to the neural monitoring equipment through a backdoor Lydia's tech expert had created. With a few taps, she began downloading everything: research data, experimental protocols, subject profiles, evidence of crimes that would destroy Kensington Labs and send Damien to prison for life. You're making a mistake, Damien slurred, fighting the effects of the inhibitor. I was creating something beautiful, the next stage of human evolution. Our children would have been gods. They would have been orphans, Elena corrected, raised by a sociopath who saw their mothers as disposable incubators. She turned to Serena, who was clutching the table for support. You have a choice. Come with me now, get real medical treatment, and maybe we can minimize the damage he's done. Or stay with him and hope the man who lied about everything else was telling the truth about having a cure. Serena looked between them, her enhanced intelligence warring with the inhibitor's effects. Elena could see the moment she made her decision the scales falling from her eyes as she recognized the monster she'd been sharing her bed and body with. The baby, Serena whispered. Is it really? My biological child? Yes. Elena's voice gentled slightly. We're carrying twins, separated before birth, but they're still our children, not his science experiments. This is kidnapping, Damien managed, trying to assert control even as his world crumbled. Corporate espionage. I'll destroy you. Elena smiled, cold and final. No, Damien, you already did that. You destroyed the woman who loved you, who trusted you, but from her ashes rose someone stronger. Someone you created but could never control. She helped Serena to her feet, surprising herself with the lack of hatred she felt for the other woman. They were both victims, both mothers, both survivors of the same betrayal. As they moved toward the door, Damien made one last, desperate play. The synchronization, he called out. It's already started. The children are connected. Separating them now could cause permanent damage. Elena paused at the threshold. Then we'll raise them together. 2 mothers, 2 children, 1 family forged from betrayal. It's not the future you envisioned, but it's the one your arrogance created. She looked back one last time at the man she'd once loved, now slumped against the wall, his empire of lies crumbling around him. Goodbye, Damien. Enjoy your solitary confinement. I hear it does wonders for introspection. As the door closed behind them, Elena heard him calling her name, but it was too late. The experiment was over, and the subjects had rewritten the conclusion. In the bright light of day, supporting the woman who'd been her rival but was now her unlikely ally, Elena felt the first stirrings of hope. The road ahead would be difficult medical treatments, legal battles, the challenge of raising neurologically unique children. But she would face it all with the strength Damien had unknowingly given her. He'd tried to make her more than human. Instead, he'd reminded her of the power of her humanity, the fierce love of a mother, the unbreakable will of a survivor, the transformative fire of a woman scorned. The future he'd engineered was dead. The future she'd choose was just beginning. Theodore Hargrove's Michigan Avenue office occupied the entire top floor of a building that bore his name, a testament to 4 generations of pharmaceutical dominance. But it wasn't the panoramic views of Chicago or the priceless art that commanded attention. It was the man himself, seated behind a desk that had belonged to his great-grandfather, radiating the kind of quiet power that shaped industries. "Tell me everything," he said simply, and Elena did. She sat in the leather chair across from him, Serena Voss beside her, an unlikely alliance forged in betrayal. Lydia stood by the window, having already briefed their father on the basics. But Theodore wanted details, and his daughter provided them with clinical precision. When she finished, Theodore was quiet for a long moment. At 68, he'd seen every form of corporate malfeasance, but this, his son-in-law experimenting on his pregnant daughter, had managed to surprise even him. "Mira," he said finally, and a woman emerged from what Elena had thought was just shadowed corner. She was perhaps 40, with the kind of unremarkable features that would be forgotten the moment she left a room, which Elena realized was precisely the point. "Mira Chen," Theodore introduced. "Former CIA, now private intelligence. I called her when Lydia first briefed me. Mira, what have you found?" The woman's voice was as neutral as her appearance. "Damien Kensington has been running unauthorized human trials for 18 months. 14 subjects, including Mrs. Kensington and Dr. Voss. 7 have already experienced fatal neural degradation. The other 5 are missing." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. 7 dead? Homeless individuals, people without families or connections, Mira continued dispassionately. Recruited through a shell charity that promised medical care. Their deaths were attributed to various causes: stroke, aneurysm, complications from pre-existing conditions. No one looked deeper. "My God," Serena breathed. "I helped him recruit funding for that charity. I thought we were helping people." "You were helping him perfect his dosing," Mira said. "Each death taught him more about the compound's limits. By the time he moved to testing on you both, he'd refined the formula significantly. You've lasted longer than any previous subjects." Theodore's expression could have been carved from granite. "What else?" Mira produced a tablet, swiping through files with practiced efficiency. The synchronization technology isn't entirely his innovation. He stole baseline research from the military, a canceled project aimed at creating psychically linked soldiers. He's been selling modified versions to hostile foreign powers through intermediaries. "Treason," Lydia said flatly. "Add it to the list." "There's more," Mira continued. "The prenatal conditioning he's been conducting, it's not just about enhancing the children. He's been encoding specific neural patterns, essentially programming them in utero. Based on these files, he intended to sell the children themselves once they reached maturity, living weapons with the ability to interface directly with enemy computer systems." The room fell silent as the full scope of Damien's monstrosity revealed itself. He hadn't just betrayed his wife and endangered his children, he'd been preparing to traffic them to the highest bidder. "Can it be reversed?" Elena asked, her hand protective over her belly. "The programming?" "Unknown," Mira admitted. "But I've identified someone who might help. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, formerly of the project Damien stole from. He's been working on neural rehabilitation techniques for soldiers affected by similar experiments. He's agreed to consult, off the books. Theodore nodded, then turned his attention to Serena. Dr. Voss, I need to know where your loyalties lie. You've been inadvertently party to multiple crimes. Your cooperation will determine whether you're a witness or a co-defendant. Serena straightened, meeting his gaze directly. Mr. Hargrove, I was ambitious, yes. I was willing to engage in corporate espionage to advance my career. But I never agreed to be a test subject, never consented to carry a stolen child, and certainly never knew about the deaths or the trafficking plans. I'll testify to everything I know. Including the false intelligence you were feeding him? Elena asked. Serena's smile was sharp, especially that. Did you know your husband was planning a hostile takeover of my company? He thought I was too infatuated to notice him copying files from my laptop during our encounters. So I started leaving carefully modified data for him to find. The poison pill defense, Theodore murmured appreciatively. You were setting him up to fail. I was protecting my company, Serena corrected. If I'd known what he was really doing. She trailed off, then looked at Elena. We need to work together, for the children if nothing else. Whatever he's done to them, they'll need specialized care, monitoring, resources neither of us can provide alone. Elena studied the woman who'd been her husband's mistress, seeing past the betrayal to the fellow victim underneath. Agreed, but we do this my way. Full transparency, no secrets. Speaking of secrets, Mira interjected, we have a problem. Damien's not at the villa anymore. Resort security says he left shortly after your confrontation, and his car's GPS has been disabled. He knows the walls are closing in. He'll run, Lydia predicted. Probably already has go-bags stashed somewhere. False identities prepared. No, Elena said with sudden certainty. He won't run. Not yet. His ego won't let him. He'll try to salvage something from this, complete his research, maybe even attempt to take the children. We need to find him before... Her phone rang, interrupting. Unknown number. She answered on speaker. Hello, Catherine. Damien's voice was strained but determined. I assume you have an audience, so I'll be brief. The neural inhibitor you gave me was clever, but temporary. My enhanced cognition has returned, and with it, clarity. Damien, Theodore said coldly, you should be calling a lawyer, not us. Theodore, how delightful. Tell me, are you proud of your daughter? She played the game beautifully. But it's not over. The children growing inside Elena and Serena are miracles of science, the next step in human evolution. I won't let you reduce them to mere mortals. They're not yours to control, Elena said. Aren't they? I designed them, shaped every synapse, every neural pathway. They're more my creation than yours, and I'll prove it. Check your email, Elena. Both of you. Elena pulled up her phone, finding a message with video attachment. She opened it reluctantly, gasping at what she saw. Security footage from the villa, but not from that day, from weeks earlier. It showed her, clearly unconscious, as Damien performed some kind of procedure, inserting a thin needle into the base of her skull. Subcranial implants, Damien explained. Nanotransmitters smaller than a grain of sand. You've both been broadcasting your neural patterns to my servers for months. Every thought, every emotion, every maternal instinct, I have it all recorded. The children have been listening to their mother's mind since conception. You bugged our brains? Serena's voice was hollow with shock. I integrated you into the network. The children aren't just genetically enhanced, they're pre-programmed with your neural patterns. Remove those patterns now, sever that connection, and you risk catastrophic psychological damage to the fetuses. They know your minds. Without that familiar signal. He let the threat hang. Elena felt sick, her hand moving to the base of her skull where she now imagined she could feel the foreign object. What do you want? Theodore asked. Simple. Elena and Serena continue the protocol until delivery. Regular treatments, monitored environments, no interference. In exchange, I'll ensure the children are born healthy and the mothers survive the process. Fight me, and we all lose. You're insane, Lydia spat. I'm a visionary, and I'm offering a compromise. The children get to live, their mothers get to raise them, and my research continues. Everyone wins. Except the 7 people you already killed, Elena said quietly. There was a pause. Necessary sacrifices. Medical progress has always required them, but you're not them, Elena. You're special, both of you. Why do you think I chose you? Your genetic profiles, your intellectual capabilities, you were perfect candidates, and you've exceeded all expectations. We need time, Theodore said, to consider the proposal. 24 hours, Damien agreed. After that, I'll be forced to take more direct action. Oh, and don't bother trying to trace this call or hack the servers. The data is distributed across 17 countries with deadman switches. If I disappear, everything gets released, including video of Elena and Serena's treatments. Imagine the media storm. Pregnant women used as test subjects, their children genetically modified. You'll be pariahs, and the children will be laboratory specimens for life. The call ended. In the silence that followed, Elena could hear her own heartbeat, wondered if the nanotransmitter was broadcasting that too. Options? Theodore asked Mira. Limited. If he's telling the truth about the implants and the psychological dependency, removing them could indeed harm the fetuses. We need Dr. Yamamoto's expertise immediately. I can have him here in 6 hours, Theodore said. Lydia, work with our legal team. Find a way to get injunctions without revealing the full situation. Mira, I want Damien found. Every safe house, every associate, every possible hiding place. What about us? Serena asked, gesturing to herself and Elena. Theodore's expression softened fractionally. You're under my protection now, both of you. We'll get through this, and we'll do it without sacrificing the children to that madman's ambitions. As the room erupted into activity, phone calls made, resources mobilized, the full weight of the Hargrove Empire bringing to bear, Elena found herself standing at the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, her husband was preparing his next move, convinced of his own righteousness. But he'd made a crucial error. He'd assumed that enhancing their minds would make them easier to control. Instead, he'd given them the tools to fight back. The neural upgrades that were slowly killing them were also showing them patterns, possibilities, connections they never would have seen before. He's going to contact the children, Elena said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Think about it. If he's been recording our neural patterns, transmitting them to the fetuses, then he can transmit his own as well. He's going to try to bond with them directly, override our connections. Serena's face went pale. The synchronization equipment at the villa. He could modify it for prenatal communication. Then we stop him, Elena said simply. He wants to play God? Fine, but gods can be overthrown, and we have something he doesn't. What's that? Lydia asked. Elena's smile was fierce. Each other. He created 2 enhanced minds and put them in opposition. Now we're allied. He engineered his own downfall the moment he betrayed us both. As plans took shape around her, Elena felt the baby move within her, strong and insistent. Whatever modifications Damien had made, whatever enhancements he'd programmed, this child was still hers, and she would burn the world down before she let him control their future. The war for the next generation had begun, and Elena Hargrove Kensington, victim-turned-warrior, was ready to show her husband the true meaning of evolution. It wasn't about transcending humanity. It was about protecting it fierce, flawed, and absolutely unstoppable when cornered. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto arrived at Theodore Hargrove's estate as the sun set over Lake Michigan, carrying equipment that looked more suited to a sci-fi film than a medical consultation. He was a compact man with intelligent eyes that had seen too much, one of the few people alive who truly understood the technology Damien had stolen and perverted. The nanotransmitters are ingenious, he admitted, studying the brain scans Mira had procured. Molecular-level integration with neural tissue. Removing them physically would be like trying to extract salt from the ocean. So we're trapped, Serena said flatly. She and Elena sat side by side, an odd partnership born of shared violation. Not trapped, Yamamoto corrected. Challenged. The transmitters can be reprogrammed, their signals overridden, but it requires access to the base frequency, something only Damien knows. Or, Elena said slowly, her enhanced neurons firing in patterns that felt almost prescient, something we can steal. She turned to Harlan Reed, Damien's business partner, who had arrived an hour earlier, looking like a man watching his life's work crumble. You have access to the Kensington Labs servers, Damien's personal files. Some of them, Harlan admitted. But his neural research is compartmentalized, encrypted beyond even my clearance. What about his implant? Elena pressed. You mentioned he has one for his edge in negotiations. If we could access that. You want to hack his brain, Mira said, a note of admiration in her usually flat voice. Turn his own enhancement against him. Poetic justice, Lydia added. But how? Elena smiled, the expression sharp with purpose. The same way he's been hacking ours, through synchronization. He taught Serena and me how to link our minds with his technology. What if we reverse it? Yamamoto leaned forward, intrigued. Theoretically possible. If you could establish a connection during one of his transmissions to the fetuses, you might be able to piggyback into his neural network. But the risk is worth it, Elena finished. He's going to contact our children, try to establish dominance over their developing minds. When he does, he'll be vulnerable. I can amplify the connection, Serena offered, her scientific mind engaging despite everything. Create a feedback loop that forces his implant to accept incoming data instead of just transmitting. Theodore had been silent throughout the exchange, but now he spoke. You're proposing to engage in literal telepathic warfare with a man who designed the system. If you fail. If we fail, we're dead anyway, Elena said bluntly. The drugs are killing us. Our children are being programmed as weapons. This is our only shot at stopping him before it's too late. The war room transformed over the next hours into a makeshift neural laboratory. Yamamoto worked with equipment borrowed from contacts at Northwestern University, while Mira coordinated surveillance on Damien's known locations. But it was Elena and Serena who formed the plan's core, their enhanced minds finding an unexpected synchronicity. He never expected us to work together, Serena observed as they reviewed the neural mapping data. His whole experiment assumed we'd be rivals, competing for his approval. His first mistake of many, Elena replied. Though I have to ask, why did you really feed him false information about your company? Serena was quiet for a moment. Because I recognized a predator. I thought I was using him for corporate gain, but some part of me knew he was dangerous. The false data was insurance. She touched her belly. I just never imagined he'd go this far. At midnight, Harlan returned with a crucial piece of information. I found something in the company's quantum storage, a backup of Damien's personal neural patterns from 6 months ago before he upgraded his implant. It might give us a baseline to work from. Perfect, Yamamoto said. We can use it to predict his current configuration, find vulnerabilities. As the team worked through the night, Elena found herself standing at the window, watching the city lights. The baby moved within her, and she wondered if it could sense what was coming, the battle for its very identity. Strange, isn't it? Serena joined her. We're about to hack into the mind of the man who violated ours, using the very enhancements he forced on us. Evolution in action, Elena replied. He wanted to create superior beings. He just didn't realize we'd evolved beyond his control. At 3 a.m., everything was ready. The equipment hummed with quiet menace, neural interfaces modified with Yamamoto's expertise and Serena's biochemical knowledge. Elena and Serena would link their minds, combining their enhanced capabilities to breach Damien's defenses. Remember, Yamamoto warned, once you're in his neural network, he'll know. You'll have minutes at most before he can mount a defense. Minutes are all we need, Elena said, settling into the interface chair. We're not trying to destroy him, just steal his secrets and sever his connection to our children. As the interfaces activated, Elena felt the familiar tingle of neural enhancement, but stronger now, shared with Serena's consciousness. For a moment, she could feel the other woman's thoughts, fear, determination, and underneath it all, a fierce maternal protectiveness that matched her own. Together, Serena whispered, and Elena nodded. They dove into the digital abyss, hunting for the signal that would lead them to Damien's mind. The man who had made them weapons was about to learn what happened when weapons chose their own targets. The neural landscape was unlike anything Elena had imagined, a vast digital ocean where thoughts became currents and memories crystallized into navigable structures. Linked with Serena, she could perceive layers of reality no unenhanced mind could process. There, Serena's consciousness indicated, highlighting a pulsing thread of data. Damien's signal. They followed it through the electronic maze, past firewalls that parted before their combined assault. Then suddenly, they were in. Damien's mind was a cathedral of ambition, every thought precisely ordered, every memory catalogued with scientific precision. But there were cracks areas of instability where the enhancement drugs had taken their toll. He's been overdosing, Elena realized, pushing his neural capacity beyond safe limits. Making him vulnerable, Serena added. Look. She directed their attention to a secured partition, behind which lay the command protocols for the nanotransmitters. But as they reached for it, Damien's consciousness stirred. Clever girls, his mental voice echoed. But not clever enough. The counterattack was vicious waves of hostile code designed to shred their neural patterns. But Elena and Serena had an advantage he hadn't anticipated: their maternal connection to the children. The fetuses' developing minds, already attuned to their mothers, amplified their signal, creating a shield Damien couldn't penetrate. Impossible, he raged, his perfect mental order beginning to fracture. You made us mothers, Elena shot back, seizing the moment to push deeper into his defenses. You forgot that nothing is stronger than a mother protecting her child. They broke through, accessing not just the transmitter codes, but something far more damaging his memories. The truth of his experiments flooded through them. The casualties, the false reports, the government contacts who'd funded his research for military applications. But it was the final memory that broke him: a childhood trauma, his father's death from Alzheimer's, the helpless rage that had driven him to reshape humanity itself rather than accept its limitations. I was saving us all, Damien's mental voice cracked, making us better, stronger. You were playing God with lives that weren't yours to control, Elena replied, beginning the delicate work of severing his connection to the transmitters. In the physical world, alarms were blaring. Damien, wherever he was hiding, would be experiencing the feedback hallucinations as his enhanced mind turned against itself, revealing every buried guilt and suppressed fear. Now, Serena urged, and together they executed Yamamoto's virus, a program designed to lock Damien's implant in a feedback loop. He would keep his enhancements, but lose the ability to interface with external systems, including the nanotransmitters. As they withdrew from his consciousness, they caught fragments of his breakdown, Damien seeing the faces of his victims, hearing their voices, unable to distinguish between reality and neural feedback. They surfaced gasping, the interface chairs smoking from the strain. Yamamoto was already checking their vitals, while Mira fielded a phone call. We've got him, she announced. Chicago PD just responded to a disturbance at a Millennium Park high-rise. Man matching Damien's description was found in the penthouse, talking to people who weren't there, confessing to crimes the officers couldn't understand. The hallucinations, Elena breathed. How long will they last? With the level of neural damage he's inflicted on himself? Yamamoto shook his head. Possibly permanent. He'll be lucid sometimes, but the enhancement drugs have fundamentally altered his brain chemistry. He'll never be able to distinguish fully between reality and neural artifacts. It should have felt like victory, but Elena felt only exhaustion. The transmitter codes? Successfully extracted, Serena confirmed. We can reprogram them now, gradually wean the children off their dependency without trauma. Theodore entered, his expression grave but satisfied. The authorities have Damien in custody. Between his public breakdown and the evidence Mira's compiled, he'll be facing life imprisonment. Multiple homicides, human experimentation, corporate espionage, the list goes on. What about us? Serena asked. The enhancements, the neural damage? Dr. Yamamoto has agreed to oversee your treatment, Theodore replied. It won't be easy, but he believes the damage can be minimized, possibly even reversed over time. Elena stood, swaying slightly as the adrenaline faded. The war was won, but the battle for their lives and their children's futures was just beginning. 6 months later, Elena stood before the board of directors of the newly restructured Kensington Labs, her body showing the final weeks of pregnancy, but her mind clearer than it had been in years. The neural enhancement drugs were mostly purged from her system, thanks to Dr. Yamamoto's revolutionary treatment, leaving behind only heightened pattern recognition and intuitive leaps that served her well in business. "The transition is complete," she announced to the assembled board members. "All illegal research has been terminated, victims compensated through the established fund, and we've pivoted entirely to ethical neuroscience applications." Harlan Reed, now CEO with Elena as chairman, nodded approvingly. "Stock prices have recovered, and our new Alzheimer's treatment based on the legal applications of the neural research just received FDA fast-track approval." It was deeply ironic, Elena reflected, that Damien's twisted experiments had yielded something that might actually help people like his father. But then, good often emerged from evil in unexpected ways. After the meeting, she made her way to the specialized medical wing they'd established within the building. Serena was already there, her own pregnancy equally advanced, reviewing data with Dr. Yamamoto. "Neural patterns are stabilizing beautifully," Yamamoto reported. "Both babies show normal development with some enhanced cognitive markers, nothing like what Damien intended, just optimized within normal human ranges." "They'll be gifted," Serena translated, "but not weapons." The two women had developed an unusual friendship over the months of shared treatment. Comothering twins separated in utero had created a bond neither had expected. They'd even decided to raise the children in close proximity, understanding that the prenatal neural connection might manifest as an unusual closeness between the siblings. "Any word from the facility?" Elena asked carefully. Serena's expression darkened. "He's requesting to see us again. The doctors say he has lucid periods where he seems almost normal. Then he slips back into the hallucinations." "We're not going," Elena said firmly. It was a conversation they'd had before. Damien, institutionalized at a secure psychiatric facility, sent regular letters, sometimes coherent apologies, sometimes rambling manifestos about his vision for humanity. "Agreed," Serena said. "He made his choices. We're making ours." A knock interrupted them. Lydia entered, carrying legal documents. "The final divorce papers," she announced, "and the custody agreements. Damien's parental rights have been terminated given his crimes and mental state." Elena signed without hesitation. The man she'd loved had died the moment he'd decided to experiment on her. What remained was just a cautionary tale about brilliance, unchecked by conscience. "There's one more thing," Lydia added, producing another document. "The government settlement. They're offering $50 million in damages for their role in funding Damien's research plus lifetime medical monitoring for you, Serena, and the children." "Blood money," Serena muttered. "Practical money," Elena corrected. "These children will need specialized care, education tailored to their unique neurology. This ensures they get it." As they discussed the details, Elena felt a sharp pain. "Oh," she gasped, hand moving to her belly. "I think—" "Labor?" Yamamoto was already moving, calling for the medical team. Serena grabbed her hand. "I'm right here. We do this together, remember?" 4 hours later, Elena held her son for the first time. He was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and eyes that seemed to see more than any newborn should. Across the room, Serena cradled his twin sister, born just minutes after via planned section. "They're reaching for each other," Yamamoto observed wonderingly. Indeed, both babies had turned toward their sibling, tiny hands outstretched. When they brought them together, the infants immediately calmed, some invisible connection satisfied. "The neural link," Serena breathed. "It's real, but gentle, natural." "They'll grow up knowing each other's thoughts sometimes," Yamamoto predicted, "but it won't control them. They'll be individuals who happen to share a unique bond." Elena looked down at her son, their son, really, hers and Serena's in the strangest way. "What do we name them?" "Hope," Serena said immediately. "Hope and chance, because that's what they represent, hope for the future and the chance to do better than their father." As the babies slept, Elena felt the last of her enhanced abilities fade, leaving her beautifully, wonderfully human. She'd been transformed against her will, used as a test subject, nearly destroyed by someone she'd trusted, but she'd survived, evolved, and emerged stronger. The future Damien had tried to force was gone. In its place was something better, a future chosen freely, built on truth instead of deception, love instead of ambition. 2 years passed in a blur of firsts, first steps, first words, first signs of the unique bond between hope and chance. Elena had built a life she never could have imagined during those dark days of discovery. The penthouse where Damien had drugged her was sold, replaced by adjacent townhouses where she and Serena raised their remarkable children. The press conference was Eleanor's idea, Eleanor Vance, the family's PR specialist and Elena's cousin. The rumors are getting out of hand, she'd argued. Better to control the narrative than let tabloids spin fiction. So here Elena stood, at a podium in the Drake Hotel's ballroom, facing a sea of reporters. Serena sat in the front row, a united front they'd maintained throughout the legal proceedings. 2 years ago, Elena began, her voice strong and clear, my then-husband, Damien Kensington, used me and Dr. Serena Voss as unwitting test subjects in illegal human enhancement experiments. The room erupted in camera flashes and shouted questions. Elena raised a hand for silence. The full details have been provided to authorities and are part of public record. What I want to address today is the future not just for our children who were affected by these experiments in utero, but for all victims of unethical human experimentation. She clicked to the first slide, the new Hargrove Kensington Institute for Ethical Neuroscience. Using the settlement funds and restructured assets from Kensington Labs, we're establishing this institute. It will provide treatment for enhancement addiction, study the long-term effects of neural modification, and most importantly, ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. What about the children? A reporter called out. Are they enhanced? Elena had prepared for this question. Hope and Chance show some heightened cognitive abilities and an unusual emotional connection to each other. But they are not weapons, not experiments. They're children who deserve privacy and the chance to define themselves. And Damien Kensington? Another voice pressed. Is it true he's been declared permanently incompetent? The hardest question. Elena took a breath. Damien's neural enhancements, combined with his own overdosing on experimental drugs, have left him in a persistent delusional state. He receives treatment at a specialized facility, but recovery is unlikely. She didn't mention his latest letters, increasingly frantic warnings about the coming convergence and the children's true purpose, the ravings of a broken mind that had once been brilliant. Dr. Voss and I have chosen to move forward, Elena continued. We're raising our children together, working to turn a nightmare into something positive. The Institute will be our legacy, not the mad dreams of a man who confused evolution with extinction. As the questions continued, Elena fielded them with growing confidence. Yes, they were monitoring the children's development. No, there were no plans for further enhancement research. Yes, other victims had been identified and were receiving treatment. Finally, Eleanor signaled that time was up. But as Elena prepared to leave, one last question rang out. Do you forgive him? The room fell silent. Elena considered the question, thinking of the man who'd kissed her belly and promised to love their child, who'd whispered sweet lies while slowly poisoning her. I understand him, she said finally. His father's death from Alzheimer's broke something in him. He wanted to transcend human limitations, to ensure no one would suffer that degradation again. But understanding isn't forgiveness. He violated the most fundamental trust between human beings, the trust that those who claim to love us won't use us as experiments. That's unforgivable. Later, back at the townhouse, Elena watched Hope and Chance play in the garden. They moved in an unconscious synchrony, always aware of each other, occasionally sharing looks that suggested communication beyond words. They're going to change the world, Serena said, joining her on the patio. Just not the way he intended. For the better, I hope, Elena replied. Look at us, Serena laughed softly. Co-parenting twins, running a revolutionary institute, redefining what family means. If someone had told me 3 years ago, this would be my life. You'd have had them committed, Elena finished. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children miracles born from betrayal, hope emerging from horror. That night, Elena received a final communication from Damien's facility. He'd suffered a complete break, the doctors reported. His enhanced mind had finally collapsed under the weight of its modifications, leaving him in a permanent vegetative state. The man who'd wanted to become more than human had ended as less, trapped forever in the prison of his own ambitions. Elena felt nothing. He'd been gone long before his body gave up, lost the moment he'd chosen to see his wife and child as data points rather than people. She looked in on the sleeping twins, their small hands reaching for each other even in dreams. Tomorrow she had meetings about the Institute, treatments with Dr. Yamamoto, the everyday challenges of raising extraordinary children in an ordinary world. But tonight, she simply stood in the doorway, watching the rise and fall of tiny chests, and marveled at the strange journey that had brought them all here. Damien had tried to write their story, to encode their futures in stolen DNA and experimental drugs. Instead, they'd written their own a story of survival, of unexpected alliances, of love emerging from the ashes of betrayal. The children stirred, perhaps sensing her presence. 4 eyes opened hopes green like her father's, chances brown like Elena's own. They smiled in perfect unison, and Elena felt her heart expand. "Sleep well, my darlings," she whispered. "Tomorrow, we continue building your world, one where brilliance serves compassion, where enhancement means becoming more human, not less." As she closed the door, Elena thought she heard something, a whisper of thought, wordless but full of love, from her children's linked minds. The future Damien had forced upon them was transforming into something beautiful. Evolution, true evolution, happened not in laboratories but in moments like this, in the choice to love what you couldn't understand, to protect what made you vulnerable, to find family in the most unexpected places. Elena Hargrove Kensington had been an experiment, but Elena Hargrove, mother, survivor, architect of a better tomorrow, was entirely her own creation, and that was the greatest triumph of all.